Hey everyone, so we all use AI models, right? Things like ChatGPT, Gemini. We use them for pretty much everything. But have you ever stopped to wonder how we actually know if they're any good? How we grade them? Well, it turns out the main tests we use have this massive hidden flaw. And a brand new study just blew the whole thing wide open. So just think about it for a second. Is the AI you use every day culturally smart? I mean, does it really get the world beyond just one single perspective? Because here's the thing. Even though these AI models are used all over the globe, they might be carrying around some serious cultural baggage. And this is the heart of the problem, really. Most of these AI models that we think of as these global powerhouses, they're all graded using one standardized test. And that test, it's pretty much built on the knowledge, the history, and the values of just one culture. It's like we're using a single American-style report card for the entire multilingual world. And as you're about to see, that causes some major problems. Right, so let's talk about this report card. This is the main way developers and companies measure how much an AI actually knows. The big one, the industry standard, is a benchmark called MMLU. You can think of it as a giant SAT exam for AI, covering 57 different subjects. Now, for years, the go-to move for global use was to just machine translate this English exam into other languages and call it a day. But what researchers found is, well, you can't just translate a test without also translating all of its hidden biases. So a team of researchers decided they were going to dig into this report card. They took a really close look, and what they uncovered points to a really fundamental flaw in how we've been measuring AI intelligence all along. So just how bad is this bias? Well, get this. The researchers found that 28%, that's nearly a third of the questions on this supposedly universal exam, aren't universal at all. Answering them correctly actually requires very specific cultural or regional knowledge. It kind of makes you question the whole idea of an objective test, right? Okay, here's a perfect example pulled straight from the test. To get this right, an AI doesn't just need to know English. It needs a pretty deep understanding of American politics and history. Now, just imagine you're a developer in, say, Japan or Nigeria, and you're trying to see if this AI is right for your users. How is this a fair question? So you might be wondering, which parts of the world does the test actually care about? Well, when the researchers broke down all the questions that needed specific geographic knowledge, the results were staggering. Over 64% focus on North America. You add Europe to that, and suddenly almost 85% of all the location-based knowledge on the test is just about the Western world. And it goes even deeper. Whenever the test asks about something related to culture, it's almost always asking about Western culture. A whopping 86.5% of those questions are rooted in Western ideas and history. What that means is, an AI literally gets a better grade for knowing about US history than it does for knowing about the history of almost anywhere else on Earth. Okay, so, faced with all this evidence, the researchers knew they couldn't just point out the problems. They had to actually build a better test. And that's exactly what they did, creating a new, much more fair benchmark they call Global MMLU. So how did they pull this off? It was a really careful, detailed process. They didn't just hit translate in a machine. First, they translated the test. But then, and this is key, they brought in hundreds of native speakers to go over every single question, refining the language and nuances. The final critical step was having human annotators go through and flag every single question that needed specific cultural knowledge. This whole process let them split the test questions into two super important categories. On one side, you have what they call culturally agnostic questions. So things like physics, math, formal logic, stuff that's the same no matter where you are. And on the other side, you have culturally sensitive questions, things that need specific local knowledge. And being able to separate these two gives us a much more honest picture of what an AI can actually do. So what happens when you take the world's top AI models and grade them using this new, fairer test? Well, the leaderboard gets completely shuffled. Those rankings that we all thought were so stable, turns out they're not. Not at all. This new test showed something really fascinating. When you look at those universal, culturally agnostic questions, Most of the top AI models perform pretty similarly. But the second you look at the culturally sensitive questions, their performance is suddenly all over the map. And AI's intelligence becomes super unstable and unpredictable, all depending on the cultural context of the question. So just how much did things change? On these culturally sensitive questions, the AI model rankings shifted by an average of, wait for it, 7.3 positions. That is a huge shakeup. An AI you thought was number 2 in the world might actually perform like it's number 9 when you test its global knowledge. The leaderboard, it turns out, is not set in stone. And we could even see this with specific big-name models. On those universal questions, yeah, they perform pretty stably. But the culturally sensitive questions, they reveal these hidden strengths and weaknesses. So you see some models, like Command R, actually improve their rank. But then other really popular models, like Quen and Llama, they tend to drop down the list when their global knowledge is really put to the test. So what does all of this mean for the future of AI? Well, it really points us down a new path, one that demands a much more thoughtful and inclusive way of building and especially testing artificial intelligence. So let's just quickly recap the big takeaways here. First, our standard AI tests are loaded with a hidden Western cultural bias. Second, just translating those tests into other languages, that's not nearly enough to fix it. We have to start evaluating AI on both universal and culturally specific knowledge. It's the only way to get a true picture of a model's capabilities for a global audience. And that really leaves us with one final crucial question. We all rely on these benchmark grades to tell us which AI is the smartest, the most capable, the most trustworthy. But if the report card itself is biased, how much faith can we really put in those grades? This research doesn't just call for a new test, it's calling for a whole new way of thinking about what it really means for an AI to be intelligent in our incredibly diverse global world.